there everybody, it's Mike DiLisio, and in anticipation of our top 10s of 2023, which we are compiling and putting together, and you'll be able to see on the Dice Tower 2023 Winter Spectacular, I thought it might be fun to go back to last year's top 10, 2022, and see where those all rank for me today. So this is a top 10 of 2022 revisited with kind of my updated feelings on it. And I'll just give little notes. I'll go from 10 to 1 and let's just go ahead and get started. So in 2022, my number 10 was Heat, Pedal to the Metal, racing game, Days of Wonder, very, very popular game. This year, I'm going to say that my revisited 2022 number 10 is Sea, Salt, and Paper, which is a small, very small box card game. And some people might find it odd you're putting a small card game into a top 10, but as the years have gone on, I realize it's silly to have artificial limitations on these lists. Sea, Salt, and Paper is a game that has very familiar elements, set collection, things along those lines, but it is a game that has come back to play over and over and over again. I've played it so many times with so many different groups. It always goes over very well. It has a neat little scoring hook, but with some very familiar elements. And so Sea, Salt, and Paper made its way onto the list. It was not on the list last year. Number 9 last year was Mille Fiori, a point salad type game by Reiner Knizia. And for the updated list, number 9 is Lands of Galzer, which was number 7 last year. So it dropped a little bit, but very little bit. It's a open world storytelling game, very, very light mechanically, almost nothing. You're just kind of rolling checks to move and progress this story along. But it's a very non-linear type of adventure. I really love the writing and the aesthetic of the world that's been created. The world building, I think, is fantastic. I still think this game is an absolute joy. All right. Number 8 last year was Wonderland's War, which was a bag building type of a game set in the world of Alice in Wonderland. In my revisited list, number 8 is Skate Summer, which was number 3 in my list last year. Now, it dropped quite a few places. It's still in my top 10 of the year, but I think it's because this one hasn't come back to the table as often as I expected it might. There have been a couple of sessions where the people at the table didn't really get the same excitement out of it. I still think it's a terrific design. I love the theme, but it really has not gotten to the table as much as I would like. So maybe I'll get a chance to play it more in 2023 and it might bump its way back up. All right, number 7 last year was Lands of Galzer, which I've already mentioned. In my revisited list, the number 7 game is Trekking Through History, which was not on my list last year, but it really probably should have been. This is a very, very light, okay, family weight game where you are creating kind of sets or runs of cards that are years throughout history that represent, important people, events, things along those lines. And it's just a really, really lovely production. It's a very welcoming game. I have been able to introduce this to many, many different groups. Now, heavy gamers probably need not apply. This is just a very, very simple game, but I think it's an improved version in a way of the game Timeline, where you're laying cards in particular orders. The only similarity is putting years in order, but this one I think is much more of a kind of a straightforward game, but it's so nice, such a welcoming game that a lot of people I think can get into with a great theme. Number 6 last year was Orichalcum, which is a game from co-designed by Bruno Catala. It's a race game to 5 points. Really, really clever, super fast. This year, my number 6 updated is Heat, which I mentioned from number 10 last year. So Heat, as I said, a racing game. This is one that's moved up my list significantly because I've been able to play through much more of it. I've played the different modules, and I've played with so many other different groups across many different player counts, maybe all of the player counts. And it's just a hit. That's all. This game feels like it's something that's going to potentially be an evergreen title. And so Heat had to move its way up. It took the inside lane and picked up a couple of spots. My number 5 last year was Flamecraft, a lovely game about dragons. And this year, in the updated version, my number 5 is Mille Fiori, which I mentioned was number 9 last year. So this moved up a few spots. This is a game that, as I said, is a point salad type of a game with a really nice production. It's not very thematic. It's quite a bit abstract game, but it still feels exciting. This is a game where everything you do propels you forward on the score track. And so yes, if you hate the idea of point salads, this probably isn't your cup of tea, but I like the way it's handled here. Clever card play. You can set up some really nice combo-rific moves. So Mille Fiori is a game that has moved up on the list. Number 4 last year was Wayfarers of the South Tigris from Garphill Games, and it's still number 4 for me. So this is what I would call a medium skewing to heavy Euro game where you are creating a lovely tableau in front of you where you've got land and water and space cards that are making up kind of this panorama that you have at the end of the game. And it has a lot of very, very solid Euro mechanics. Like I said, it's relatively heavy and it's got it's got a learning curve. Let's just keep it there. But boy, do I really, really enjoy this game. And I've played it quite a bit throughout the year. So it stayed where it was at. Number 3 last year was Skate Summer, which I already mentioned. It dropped a bit. And taking its place in 3 is Flamecraft. So I mentioned it's a game about dragons. This is a family weight game, family plus weight game, where you are playing as artisan dragons, and they're going to different locations around this central board, which is going to give you some resources, abilities, things along those lines. The cards that you play, which are the dragons, all have their own abilities that allow you to manipulate things and get more resources or get more points. It has some clever cards going on in there. It is just a game that goes over very well. I mean, basically every convention that we have at the Dice Tower, I end up teaching this game at least once. I still see it played a lot. So this is a game I don't think is going anywhere anytime soon, and it moved up on my list. Number 2 last year was Tribes of the Wind, which is a game set in a kind of a post-apocalyptic setting where you are trying to build new civilization on the tops of trees to kind of avoid all the nastiness that went there below. And so it's really about playing cards. It's a card-driven game with some board. Each player has their own player board where you're trying to do particular things there. But to me, it's all about the card play where you have to play cards of a particular type of color. You can see the colors, the backs of the other player's cards. And so it allows you to kind of be able to know what you can play out there. So really, really clever, and it's a game that I have continued to play. I always am in the mood to play for it, and that's a big thing for me. I don't know that I've ever been offered to play this game and I'm like, I'm not really in the mood. I always will play this game. Really, really solid. Tribes of the Wind, 2 last year, and it's still number 2. And finally, last year, my number 1 game of 2022 was Endless Winter Paleo Americans, and it's still my number 1 of 2022, Endless Winter Paleo Americans. This is another mid-skewing to heavy Euro game from Stan Kordonski and publisher Fantasia Games, who did a tremendous knock-it-out-of-the-park job with the production. It's a very beautiful-looking game, and what you were trying to do is kind of survive and thrive in the Paleolithic age, I should say. And you're doing this primarily through a worker placement mechanic, and you're playing cards. And this is a game that has a lot of different things going on. So you've got worker placement going on, you've got set collection going on with hunting of animals, you've got a bit of an area majority or control type of a thing going on with your building these this kind of 3-dimensional aspect on the board. There's tons of expansions that came with the game that you can add or subtract to your liking, but this is just a game that I really feel like speaks to a lot of my favorite things in games, and so it still kept that top spot. All right, well, that's going to do it. My list didn't change a whole lot, but I think that's good. It means that I had things pretty set last year, and just a couple little changes this year. All right, well, that's going to do it for me. This is Mike DiLisio signing off from the Dice Tower Midwest Annex.